Hello and welcome to the CBT Nuggets exam pack for Microsoft Exam 70-668 Pro, Microsoft SharePoint 2010 Administrator. My name is Tim Warner, and I'm overjoyed to be your instructor for this series. Our agenda for this introductory nugget is as follows. We'll begin by understanding SharePoint certification. Microsoft has expanded the certification portfolio for its SharePoint product quite a bit in the last several years. Accordingly, I want you to have a ground floor understanding of where this current exam fits in the SharePoint 2010 portfolio. I'll then explain the teaching methodology I put into this course. This is useful for you for a couple reasons. One, to make sure that you are in fact in the correct training course. And number two, I'm going to give you tips on using this training for maximum effect to both pass your 668 exam with a minimum of time, fuss, or muss, and also come away with as many practical tips and tricks and skills as possible. Third, we'll give you some focused advice on passing the 70-668 exam. This exam uses a slightly different format from several of the other IT Pro exams, and it certainly bears some discussion. About SharePoint certification. A handful of years ago, Microsoft changed their titles for their IT Pro and Developer certifications. On the IT Pro side of the fence, it used to be that if you passed a single technology exam, for instance maybe Windows Server 2003 or Windows XP Professional Support, you became what's called a Microsoft Certified Professional, or MCP. Generally speaking, the top tier IT Pro credential historically has been the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, or MCSE. This certifies you as a skilled administrator and actually architect for Active Directory networks, and in particular the Windows Server 2003 OS version. I think Microsoft saw a possible weakness of the old titles is that they weren't granular enough. That is, MCP doesn't really tell potential employers or clients where your skill set lies. And while it's true that the MCSE carries a lot of weight even to this day in terms of Windows Systems Administration, Microsoft nonetheless saw fit to create a new top-tier credential. Here's the way it looks now. The entry-level title in Microsoft certification land is called MCTS. This stands for Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist. And the idea here is you can add as many technologies under the MCTS title as you have skills for, and of course as you have money to pay for the exams goes. With respect to the previous major version of SharePoint, which is Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007, hereafter referred to as MOS 2007, and the free analog or foundation of MOS, Windows SharePoint Services 3.0, the certification options there were limited and actually terminated at the MCTS level. You could earn an MCTS in MOS and or WSS3 administration or MOS 2007 WSS3 application development. And that was it. Microsoft, as I said in the intro of this nugget, has expanded the portfolio quite a bit, such that of course we still have the MCTS in SharePoint 2010. There's no longer a distinction between the foundational version and the premium engine. In SharePoint 2010, we don't have WSS4, we have SharePoint Foundation 2010. Same thing though, just the next level. And instead of MOS 2007, the enterprise licensed product, we have SharePoint Server 2010. There's no longer that confusing difference. We have just a title in SharePoint 2010, and we can still qualify as an MCTS administrator or .NET application developer, and those take one exam each. Period. The next level, I would call it the top tier credential, but there's actually a couple more in much more recent Microsoft certification history that we'll talk about in just a moment. But generally speaking, for most working IT pros, your top tier credential is going to be the Microsoft Certified IT Professional, or MCITP. Say that 5 times quickly. Now, if you're an administrator like we are, you're going to pass the Pro exam 70-668. That's what we're studying in this nugget series. So you'll have to pass exam 667 to earn your MCTS, and then once you pass 668, you'll have not only the TS in SharePoint Server Administration, but you'll also have the MCITP in SharePoint 2010 Administration. For developers, Microsoft has wisely taken the SharePoint 2010 Developer top tier title. It used to be under the ITP name, but it really doesn't make sense because ITP stands for IT professional. And generally speaking, we're talking about skill sets on two sides of the same fence. You have your IT pro, systems administration, systems architecture, and then your development, solutions developer stuff on the other side. Microsoft's current .NET development title is MCPD. This is Microsoft Certified Professional Developer. And there is a pro exam for SharePoint 2010 application development. Once you've passed the associated TS exam and then the pro exam, you become a professional developer in SharePoint 2010. So that's the major meat and potatoes. As far as what I would call fringe certifications, and I use fringe for a couple good reasons. Remember, this is just putting in my opinion here as well as giving you objective fact. The Microsoft Certified Master in SharePoint 2010 and the Microsoft Certified Architect are programs that are largely still in flux. In fact, MCA isn't even fully released yet as of this recording in late 2010. Another reason why I call these sort of fringe certifications is that their entry-level cost is much, much higher in terms of cost, investment, monetary investment, time investment, travel costs, etc. Now, Microsoft Certified Master is truly a top-tier credential. In order to even qualify to start this program, you have to have all of either the MOS 2007 and WSS exams passed or all of the SharePoint admin and development exams passed. They also, by they I mean Microsoft, also force you to take a training class in Redmond, Washington, pass an additional exam, and also there's a lab practical where you're given some live gear, a live installation of SharePoint server, and you're asked to troubleshoot, do your traditional implementation, maintenance, updating kinds of things. So because of that, you are really certifying in a very, very deep and profound way that you understand SharePoint. But as I said, because of the time investment and cost investment involved, we've got far fewer Microsoft Certified Masters than we do MCTSs or MCITPs. The ultimate top-tier credential is called MCA. This is Microsoft Certified Architect, in which you have to demonstrate industry experience as a SharePoint architect, give a presentation to Microsoft, significant investment of time, money, and effort. And as a working SharePoint professional, you have to ask yourself, is it worth that expense? That is to say, do I believe I'm going to get adequate return on my investment by earning one or both of these titles? Will I be able to bill more, for instance, than my competition? And that's actually a tough question that you'll have to answer in the light of your own conscience. Now, the website you need to know for all of this Microsoft certification stuff in general is microsoft.com/learning. In fact, why don't we head out there right now? Here we are at the Microsoft Learning website. The way they've laid this out is very intuitive. I've always admired their navigation structure. What I recommend is go under the certification heading and then under by product technology, and we can scroll on down to SharePoint Server and you come up to the page that you see right now. And as you see, we have an overview, and it mentions here second shot exam vouchers, and this is an important point when it comes to register for your tests. We'll talk about that and also the Microsoft Certification Pack in just a few minutes. So I want to put that as a bookmark for both of us. First, we'll come over to MCTS for SharePoint Server, and you see the full list here. In fact, we have an exam retiring, it looks like. WSS is retiring. I find this a little bit confusing because they throw together the previous stuff, the WSS3, the MOS 2007. We're focusing up here. Microsoft SharePoint 2010 configuring, that's the MCTS exam 70-667. And then there's an associated MCTS for application development, that's exam 70-573. If we come over to the Professional Certifications tab, we see that to earn the MCITP as a SharePoint administrator, we have to also pass our current exam under consideration. And you should also definitely spend time on the exam prep page for any Microsoft exam that you're studying for. Microsoft does a good job of explaining, in particular, the skills that are measured. Let's go over to this tab. This outline should be your first line of defense in terms of skills checking. Am I ready to pass this exam? Over the last year or so, Microsoft has taken some time to provide weightings, relative weightings, for each section in the outline. Here it's not particularly helpful other than the outline says that each section, designing a farm topology, planning deployment, defining an operations strategy, and then search and business solutions, all factor in about equally in the overall exam content. Looking at the exam 70-668 outline is a good entree to the next whiteboard I have for you here, and this is a description of this course and how you can best use it to pass your 70-668 exam. Now, the first thing I'd like you to do is compare that exam page from Microsoft and its list of stated objectives with our outline of this 20 nugget series. You'll find a one-to-one mapping actually in between these video titles and the content in that outline. My goal whenever I create a course for you is to provide 100% coverage of every single exam objective listed in a vendor's outline. So we're going to leave this first nugget, of course, and dive right into designing a SharePoint physical architecture and network infrastructure, and then just go right into it. A common question that comes up for students is, does it matter if I watch these nuggets sequentially, or can I just jump hither and yon? Ultimately, the choice is up to you and the skills that you're coming into this series with. My best advice, though, the standard advice I give, is that you do in fact start at the beginning, proceed until the end, and stop, if you don't mind the quote from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The reason I give you that suggestion is twofold. One, I tend to build skills and content sequentially. That is, as we work through these nuggets, we're going to assume in later nuggets that we've already picked up skills and concepts that were covered earlier in the course. So if you're coming in with a high skill set, you may not mind that, but if you're fairly new to the material, you're really going to want to have that earlier knowledge in order to apply that to a concept later in the course. So that's one reason. Another reason is that I do explicitly make reference to previous nuggets in my training in the name of providing flow through the course. I want this course, as I want all of my courses, to flow smoothly and not just be a collection of individual disparate nuggets. You see what I mean? Moreover, you're going to get maximum bang for your buck with my courses if you have some ability to practice these skills in your own environment. Please look into downloading evaluation versions of Windows Server 2008, SharePoint 2010, Visual Studio. You can download trial versions of any or all of that software. You can actually download pre-configured virtual hard drive files from Microsoft. And if you have any kind of a fairly new computer, you should be able to set up a 1 or 2 host practice lab network with a minimum of fuss using a desktop virtualization software. The one that I like to use is made by formerly Sun, now Oracle. It's called VirtualBox. It's a free download, and you can install 1 or more virtual SharePoint servers and all run them side by side, assuming you have enough memory on your host system, on a single computer. Gone are the days when I got into computing in the mid-90s, or get into professional computing, I should say. Any kind of practice lab or demo work involved separate pieces of hardware. Nowadays, with virtualization, that's not necessary, and I'm very grateful for that. Our final element in this nugget is, what about the 70-668 exam in particular? What do you need to know to pass it? Well, of course, I'm not going to give you details that would violate the non-disclosure agreement that all exam candidates must attest to prior to taking the test, but I can give you some general, publicly available information. First of all, you should know that when it comes time to register, you need to go to prometric.com/Microsoft. You can register on the telephone or through the website. Microsoft exams are all standardized at $125 USD per attempt. Now, that might seem like a high price of admission, and it is, but I want you to understand that almost always Microsoft has their second shot promotion going. What Second Shot is, if you haven't used it, is that you register for Second Shot first. It's important that you do that, because then the code you get from Second Shot can be used in conjunction with your initial exam registration, such that if you don't pass that test on the first try, you can redeem your Second Shot voucher code and get a second attempt on that exam. So that effectively cuts down the cost of your exam 50%. Please don't register for a Microsoft Microsoft exam unless you can get a second shot. More recently, Microsoft has been offering these second shot exam packs. Now, these are cost-effective solutions if you know that you're going to go all the way, for instance, to the MCITP. You know you'll have to pass the 667 TS exam as well as the 668 test. You can actually buy second shot vouchers that cover both of those exams, and you get a discount. So you're getting a smaller financial hit initially on that because you're investing in the entire track up front. And with second shot, that means you get 2 attempts at each of those tests. Really good stuff. Now, as far as the specifics of those exams, 667 is more of a feature familiarity test. I created a CBT Nuggets course to cover SharePoint 2010 70-667. You actually would be well advised to study that course if you have a CBT Nuggets streaming subscription. There's some excellent content in there, and really it forms the foundation of what we're covering in the 668 skill set. By feature familiarity, I'm talking about understanding chiefly all of the new and changed features in SharePoint 2010. Now, you have to understand from a business perspective, look at it from Microsoft's point of view. They want people to certify on their new versions of their products, and they want those certification candidates to understand those new and changed features. So I always tell students, pay attention to the deltas, the changed stuff, and the new features, because chances are the questions you see most coverage on that test are going to be focused on those new and changed features. So therefore, you come out of the 667 exam having a really broad understanding of what SharePoint can do from a ground level administrator's point of view. By contrast, the 668 exam uses, instead of just a straight ahead short form multiple choice format, you have more of a case study format. Therefore, whereas 667 you're putting on the hat of the day-to-day systems administrator with SharePoint, with 668 you're taking more of a manager's system architect's role, and we're concerned more with overarching planning, architecture kinds of issues. Now, because it's a case study type exam, you can expect there's a lot more to read. I mention this with specific emphasis on my students for whom English is not their primary language. Of course, Microsoft localizes exams in multiple languages, but you want to keep in mind that the 668 exam does involve quite a bit of reading comprehension. You read the case, you have to deeply understand everything that's going on in that situation, that fictional business case, and then answer a series of questions that pertain to that scenario. And you're going to need to pull out of your bag of tricks, so to speak, your knowledge of all of the SharePoint 2010 features to figure out which one or ones are most appropriate for any particular planning or architectural task. Alrighty then, in this introductory nugget, we learned about SharePoint certification, so at this point you should have a very crisp understanding of what's involved to earn the MCTS and or the MCITP in SharePoint 2010 administration and or application development. You also should know now how we've structured the course to match 100% to Microsoft's published exam objectives and tips for approaching the material, lab environment, watching the nuggets sequentially, etc. And then finally, I gave you the heads up on registering and taking, and ultimately passing, of course, the 70-668 Pro exam. Without any further ado, let's strap on our thinking caps and get ready to have some fun and master some very interesting SharePoint 2010 material. I hope that this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.